My name is Drew Meyers, and it's my honor to introduce a lot of y'all to Emmett Paré. Coach Paré died approximately, well, a little over 35 years ago, and as a result, not too many people know about him and what he did. He was born in Chicago in 1907 and was an outstanding tennis player. He won several professional tournaments, including at that time it was amateurs, so he won the U.S. National Clay Courts, the Western Open, Cincinnati Masters, played the U.S. Open, but because of the Depression he had to earn a living, so he turned pro. And when he turned pro, he toured with Big Bill Tilden, one of the greatest tennis players of all time, and so he earned some money that way, touring with Tilden and the other pros. And Bill Tilden actually described Coach Paré as a great natural player, and he was phenomenal on clay courts and had the strokes and the temperament to be very, very tough to beat. In 1934, he became the head coach at Tulane down in New Orleans, and at the same time the head pro at the New Orleans Lawn Tennis Club. And he quickly established the Tulane program as one of the dominant programs in the country. I equate it, a lot of people these days, everybody knows Dan McGill. Dan McGill was the great Georgia coach who built the program into the national power it is, and Coach McGill's Bulldogs dominated collegiate tennis from the 70s, 80s, all the way to today. Well, back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, when Tulane was a member of the SEC, Tulane was the dominant power. Under Coach Paré, they won 20 SEC championships, won a national championship in 1959, which was the only, and still remains the only, national team championship that Tulane has never won. He also coached 8 NCAA singles champions and 2 NCAA doubles champions. At the same time, he was also the head tennis pro at the New Orleans Lawn Tennis Club and developed a number of top-notch players who went on to play. Some played for him, but many others went off to other schools and had successful careers. A lot of his juniors at the New Orleans Lawn Tennis Club went on to play professionally, played college, were all conference, were Southern champions, nationally ranked. Some of the guys that I grew up with, and including my brothers and Randy Gregson Jr., David Schumacher, Neil Shapiro, Peggy Andrew, who's now playing on the Senior Cup team for Louisiana. Some of those players played in the U.S. Open. Some of those players played in the Australian Open. They had wins over people like Zan Gary, Charlie Owens, Peter Fleming, Kevin Curran. So Coach had his Tulane players and he had his club players, and both groups were really good. But Coach Paré's claim to fame, and deservedly so, was his, I believe it's 9 Southern Tennis Hall of Famers that he coached. He coached Ernie and Cliff Sutter. He coached Les Longshore, Wade Herron. He coached Crawford Henry, Ron Holmberg, Ham Richardson, and Linda Tuero. Ham Richardson was from Baton Rouge, but Coach Paré coached Ham from the juniors all the way through. Ham Richardson, of course, was one of the top American players for many years. Linda Tuero was also top 10 in the world. Both of those players actually, Ham played for Coach Paré at Tulane, and interestingly enough, Linda Tuero also played for Coach Paré because she was on the men's team. She was so good. So he has quite a legacy of developing players and coaching players, and he was a no-nonsense, strict disciplinarian. He wasn't going to waste your time, and more importantly, he wasn't going to waste his time if you weren't serious about playing tennis, if you weren't out there practicing every day. And I know he was tough on his Tulane players, and he was tough on his club players. And I was 15 or so when he passed away, but he had coached me for about 5 years, and my older brothers too. And if he didn't see you out practicing, you would hear about it at the next lesson. And he had kind of a booming voice, and if he started a sentence that said, "You kids these days," and he'd go on about how we didn't practice, it didn't work, then we would hear about it. But he was a great man. He was very loyal to his players. His players loved him. They respected him greatly. And I don't know if there'll ever be another coach like Emmett Paré in tennis.